Hi everyone, and welcome to ODTUG's online education series. Today's presentation is Baha Mar's All-In Bet on Red, the story of integrating data and master data with PBCS, FCCS, and ARCS, presented by Tony Scalise of Alithya Ranzel. Today's presentation will be recorded and available for viewing on the ODTUG website. Please put your questions into the questions box at any time during the presentation, and they'll be addressed during the Q&A period at the end of the webinar. So welcome, Tony, and thank you for being with us today.
Sure. Thank you, Karen. Good afternoon, everybody. Well, depending on where you are, I guess good morning or good evening. But thank you for joining, and we'll do a special encore presentation of a presentation that I delivered at Kscope 18 this past June. So for those of you that attended Kscope and weren't able to see the presentation, welcome. For those of you that did not see the presentation at Kscope, hopefully this reinforces the idea of why Kscope is a great conference to attend, and hopefully we'll see you next year. We have some more details at the end of the webinar about next year's Kscope conference, Kscope 19. So let's get started. Briefly, I'll give you a little background of Alithya Ranzel, formerly known as Edgewater Ranzel, myself, as well as Baha Mar. And we'll do a bit of project background, and then we're going to dive deeply into the data integration aspect of this project, as well as the master data integration. Share some lessons learned, like every good presentation, and then, as Karen noted, we'll do a brief Q&A at the end. Feel free at any point throughout the webinar to put those questions in the chat box on the GoToWebinar panel. At the end of the presentation, I will do my best to play those back to the audience and address them in the time that we have. So again, thank you for joining us. A little bit about Alithya Ranzel. Formerly, we were Edgewater Ranzel as of November 1st. We were acquired by Alithya, which is a Canadian-based company. Incredibly complementary acquisition that occurred for us. Alithya has a very strong focus in the ERP space, particularly around Oracle General Ledger. So now we are able to service from the General Ledger all the way through to EPM. So very exciting time for us. We're looking forward to that and to our expansion even more so into the Canadian markets. But about us, Edgewater Ranzel has been around for quite a number of years. We were founded in 1996, and as you can see there, we've got kind of four sections of this slide: comprehensive business solutions, a bunch of different types of clients, adaptable deployment models, and deep Oracle partnerships. We focus mainly on Oracle EPM and BI, along with big data. We function across many different verticals, ranging from financial services, technology, healthcare, so on. As it's probably near and dear to everybody that's in the Oracle EPM space today, the idea that we're able to deploy, whether it's on-premise, cloud, or some mixture thereof, known as hybrid. And then obviously an Oracle Platinum partner, we're proud of that and the distinction there. So very senior group of individuals at the organization. We're roughly 200 people, and I'm one of those. So a bit about me. I am the Vice President of Technology. I run our Center of Excellence, which focuses on standards and quality control across our projects. That's an internal focus. Externally, it's brand growth and relationship management within the Oracle channel. So that's a bit of what I do. I've been around the space for a long time now. I'm coming into 18 years, which every time that I say that, it makes me a little more sad because it just means my youth is further and further away from me. But I got my start in corporate FP&A, where I was an administrator for financial systems, specifically Hyperion Enterprise and Upstream, along with Hyperion Pillar, and then eventually Hyperion Planning. So been in the consulting space for over 12 years now. Certified in a number of different technologies within the Oracle EPM stack. I am an Oracle ACE, which is something that I'm quite proud of. I do put a lot of value into that distinction that's been given by Oracle, and so I like to share that. I do blog a bit, a little bit of Twitter, and my pursuit in the evangelism and knowledge sharing space has been in the form of books in the last couple of years, so a couple of books that I've authored. All right, let's get into the fun stuff. Let's talk a little bit about Baha Mar. So what is Baha Mar? Well, if you're not familiar with it, bahamar.com, but it's a multi-billion-dollar five-star resort in Nassau. It is absolutely gorgeous. I've had the unfortunate problem of having to go there and actually do work at their resort, stay on their property, and eat in their restaurants. Very difficult life for me. I'm very sad. It's probably one of the lesser enjoyable projects that I've had. If you can't sense the sarcasm coming through, then you're probably not going to enjoy today's conversation. They are owned by CTF, which is a subsidiary of a Hong Kong conglomerate of Chow Tao Thai Fook, which I've probably butchered that. I apologize. Interesting, they had a soft open in April of 2017, which means the resort's not fully open, not fully running. They just kind of get things going, get things started, and work out the kinks. Full open in October of 2017. So all the restaurants are open, all the pools, all the bars, the different properties that are there in terms of the hotels are up and running by October 2017. 3 primary brands, Grand Hyatt, SLS, and Rosewood, all very high-end properties. Jack Nicklaus Golf Course, because what resort wouldn't be complete without that? A spa, luxury shopping, including one of my favorite brands. I'm a giant Hublot fan, so if you enjoyed today's presentation and you want to set up a GoFundMe to buy me a new Hublot watch, I will not turn you down. Excellent restaurants, just a few mentioned there, and somewhat different, a casino with ocean views, which is different than many of the gaming places that you may be familiar with. You can actually see sunlight and the ocean, and it's actually a very welcoming, and it almost entices you to go to the casino and have some fun. And there are a lot of additions planned over the coming years, so while they've spent billions of dollars getting this resort up and running, they're not going to just sit back and rest on that. They're going to continue to expand and grow that offering, including things that will make it a bit more family welcoming and friendly. So there's the property, absolutely gorgeous. And there was my room all the way down close to the basement behind another building in the Grand Hyatt. But still not a bad place to be. My colleague, on the other hand, was always able to find his way into the pink building on the right-hand side and one of those balconies overlooking the ocean. I guess I'm just not that smooth. All right, so a bit about the project. So Baha Mar has an interesting history. The property was previously had gone through bankruptcy. So another organization came in, tried to start and build Baha Mar. I guess we could say they mismanaged it, would be one way of looking at it, and so they went through bankruptcy. But prior to that bankruptcy, they had implemented PBCS. However, it was an incredibly rudimentary implementation. While it served some of their reporting needs and some of their forecasting needs, data had to be hand-keyed into the system every single day. And as we go through this, keep this in mind, the idea that data is flowing into this system quite literally every day, 365 days a year, data is being input into this system to support their forecasting and their reporting processes. So as they came out of that bankruptcy with the new owners under CTF, they re-envisioned what the EPM project would be and what they would need to support. So daily operational reporting. Every single day, as I said, they wanted to be able to go in and see the results of operations from the prior day. With gaming and hospitality, things can move incredibly rapidly, and they need to be able to flex their staff, for example, to the right levels to be able to respond to changes in the business day over day. So as part of that, not only the daily operational reporting, but that got into some of the budgeting and forecasting. What happened over the past days or weeks very much plays an impact in what the budget and forecast will look like. It is a very dynamic industry. Also, as part of that, you need to support your financial close. So your month-end close, that process needed to be accommodated in the new EPM project. And then finally, in support of that close process, the account reconciliation. So as we're going through and we're closing our books, we also need to be reconciling those balances. what's in the subsystems, what's our cash balance. That's obviously a very important one when you think about gaming. So account reconciliation was part of the re-envisioned EPM project. So what products did they procure to address this? Well, first you've got PBCS, Planning and Budgeting Cloud Service. You've got Financial Close and Consolidation Cloud Service, or FCCS, Account Reconciliation Cloud Service, ARCS. And then this is what's going to come later in the presentation, but this one was interesting, where we had Enterprise Data Management Cloud Service, or EDMCS. This was actually midway through the project that we got into this cloud service, and we'll talk a bit about that, as well as why cloud data management is listed as a sub-bullet under there. People that are familiar with the suite might be scratching their head saying, what exactly is Tony talking about? Cloud data management isn't related to EDMCS, but we'll talk to you a bit about why it's there. And then lastly, a bit of a departure from the cloud world is Financial Data Quality Management Enterprise Edition, or FDMEE. This is the on-premises component, and this is what makes a solution hybrid, or part of what makes a solution hybrid. In this case, we had FDMEE on-premises to address some of the requirements. And so you might look at this and say, you've got a bunch of cloud services. Why exactly did you go with FDMEE? And we're going to talk about that today. So when we think about this here, let's do a quick compare and contrast between FDMEE and cloud data management. Cloud data management is the slimmed down version of FDMEE that comes with your subscriptions to PBCS, FCCS, and ARCS. So what I like to do is I like to compare and contrast the capabilities of each one of those products. And this doesn't represent every single capability, but this represents some core ones that might drive some decisions. So a lot of different things here. We've got flat file processing. The system can do both of those things. Connecting to on-premise ledger systems like Oracle or SAP, or even relational databases. So if it's a data warehouse or if it's just some system that runs relationally, only FDME can do that. Cloud data management can't. Obviously, FDME and cloud data management both do mapping. They can do multiple periods of data. You've got data synchronization that you can do between FCCS and PBCS using cloud data management. But if I needed to run something between, say, HFM on-premises and PBCS, or SSpace on-premise and PBCS, then that's where cloud data management isn't currently capable of doing that. So there were some key things that jumped out as we started to think about what Baha Mar needed to do, what their requirements were. So we needed to connect to relational data sources that were sitting on premises. We needed the ability to do scripting in this application. So this app has a tremendous amount of automation. And you can see from this slide that automation is available to you from FDMEE or from cloud data management. But what's not available to you in cloud data management is the ability to provide a feedback loop. How did that automation actually work out? Did it run successfully? Was there an error? If there was an error, where are the logs that tell me what the error was? What's the information? What's the actionable information that becomes available? With scripting in FDMEE, we can provide that. So we can obviously automate, but then we can provide that feedback loop that allows people to take action or to know that they don't need to take any action. It's a push of information as opposed to a pull, where in cloud data management, somebody would need to log in, check the status of each integration that was run. Lastly, on the slide here that I've got circled is flat file master data integration. So when we looked at FDME versus cloud data management, that was the one area where FDME couldn't service those needs. And at one point, that actually came into play. So we'll talk a bit about through today how this isn't a one or the other. We blended these technologies together to achieve a solution for Baha Mar that was incredibly automated and really streamlined their entire integration cycle for both data and master data. So let's talk about data integration a bit. Here's just a quick snapshot of the different data sources that were available to us. So we needed to load information around revenue for food and beverage, for golf and the retail shop associated with the golf course. So if you go in and you decide, oh, I need a pack of balls, or I need a shirt, or whatever you might need from the pro shop, that is captured in a system that sits on premises and needed to be integrated from. You go to the spa and you get a nice massage and you buy some of their products, then that gets captured daily, and we need to get that. Obviously, we need to get some information from what's going on in the hotel, how many rooms have been sold, what's our occupancy rate. And then as we start to get into some of the other things here, we've got all the different stuff that's going on in the casino. So what's going on at the slots and at the tables, and what's going on at the sports book. So all of that, a bunch of different things that needed to come into the system. And if you look at the first row, Symphony, through the net time row, which is the fourth row from the bottom, that was all going into the daily operational reporting. So very important to think about this. Again, daily, we've got to be integrating this data. Some of these things were on-premise relational systems, those first three. And then you had a whole section here that was flat file generated. So the systems, they were either hosted, they didn't have web services available to them, they could only provide flat file exports for us or Excel exports. We needed to be able to integrate those things into the system. So a lot of integration requirements that, again, daily, we needed a more powerful vehicle to handle these integrations. So we went with FDMEE because of those different things. And here were some of the complex integration needs that we were able to address and that we faced and were able to address with FDMEE. So one of the systems that you saw on the previous slide, the vendor, it was a third-party hosted vendor solution. And each day, the only way that Baha Mar could get their information was they would receive an email with an XLS attached to it of the output from that system from the prior day's activities. There was, again, no web service available to us. They could not produce it in any other format other than Excel. And the only way that they could get it to us, they were unable to FTP it. The only method, and again, this is hospitality and gaming, so some of these vendors are small and they service a particular need, and the system may do it well, but they don't necessarily have the tight integration capabilities. So we had to get an email from them daily. Well, instead of somebody having to go to their email, download the file, do the conversion, and then upload it to cloud in order to run it through Cloud Data Management, in FDMEE, we created a script that would scrape through the email inbox that we set up. When it found the email, it would download the attachment from it, and then it would run a conversion on that Excel file and convert it to a CSV format so that we could take that flat file extract and load that through FDMEE into PBCS to support the daily operational reporting. Kind of an interesting, fun one. We also had instances where the vendors could only provide us an extract in XML format. So FDMEE from Cloud Data Management don't natively process XML today. It's certainly on the roadmap, but it's not there today. So we had to take that XML file and put that into a format that we could easily process with FDMEE. So we used scripting to do that. In other instances, vendors were able to send us a file via FTP. Great. We still needed to take that file from the FTP server and get it into the directories to process for FDMEE. So we did that as well through scripting. Non-homogeneous data files. What does that crazy word mean? Basically, it means that there's a file that doesn't have a consistent layout across its rows and columns. And I'm going to show you a screenshot of this to help you to kind of reinforce how this works. But we were able to achieve integrating that problem. So non-homogeneous data file. What does this mean? So this is a casino file, and this is from the slots. Everything's blurred out because obviously we can't share their data with you. But you can see here there's multiple fields here that are circled. So we needed to get all of these different fields from this file. And this is quite literally one file. You can see it's not delimited. These are fixed width fields, and the width is actually variable. So in the first block, where we've got asset count and metered coin in, for example, the alignment of those fields is different than the second block, where we have the actual jackpot / ticket dollars. We needed to find a way to be able to integrate this data. Well, for anybody that's been around FDM Classic for a while, or even around FDMEE for a while, or Cloud Data Management, you know that in Cloud Data Management, this would be impossible. You would be able to get one of these blocks, but not all three of them. With FDMEE's import scripting capability, we were able to take this file and extract the different fields of information that we needed there. So the asset count, the metered coin in, the actual jackpot, so on and so forth. Only achievable through scripting. So we can convey to the customer that FDMEE will address their needs. But if a customer has made the investment in the Oracle Cloud SaaS products, and you're asking them to procure an on-premises component, well, then you need to add some enrichment to that. You need to give a better return on investment to that. So what do we do to do that? We have batch automation alerting, so that feedback loop that I was talking about. These things run every single day. Well, let's send an email that tells you, did the data load successfully? And if it didn't, here's some information that you can use that's actionable to fix the problem and make sure the data gets integrated. We did what's called S-Space Enhanced Validate. I'm going to drill into each one of these in a bit. We actually set substitution variables in PBCS, and I'll talk to you a bit about that. Execution of business roles. So Cloud Data Management can execute business roles now. FDMEE, as it stands now at the 220 patch of the 11.124 release, can't do that natively, but we enhanced FDMEE to do that, to make sure that before a load was occurring, we were clearing the right intersections, and after the load was occurring, we were running the appropriate calculations and aggregations. And then we built in automated metadata loads. So I'll talk to you a bit about each one of these things. So batch automation alerting. Again, reinforced this when I gave the presentation. If you were there, I apologize that I sound like a broken record. If I sound like a broken record today, it's because I want to reinforce this concept. This process runs quite literally every single day of the year. That includes every holiday imaginable, 365 days a year, this process runs. Well, to ask a systems owner to go in and check the status of that every single day to make sure that everything got loaded properly is not realistic. These guys are spread incredibly thin there. What it takes to stand up and open a resort, I have never seen people work as much as the people at Baha Mar work. And that's after 12 years in consulting. Being at a number of customers and being in the consulting industry, I can very easily say that these people work unbelievable amounts of hours. To ask them to do more work wasn't going to fly. So we need to be able to run this process every day to load multiple files. And we need something that's going to tell them what the result is. So set up an email, it goes out, it tells them the data that was loaded or the data that was processed. If it was loaded successfully, if it wasn't, it attached if they needed to add mappings, if they had a calculation error, if S-Space Enhanced Validate failed, these logs were added. So what is S-Space Enhanced Validate now that I've brought it up? Well, it was something that I developed in conjunction with one of my colleagues about 10 years ago, and it was targeted to on-premises deployments of S-Space and Hyperion planning. What it did was it would actually go out and it would look at the metadata of the target application. Where am I loading that data? So essentially looking at the outline of S-Space and saying, okay, I've got a set of data that's been mapped per the mapping tables, and I've got metadata. Am I able to actually load that mapped result Or is SSpace going to reject a particular record because a member doesn't exist, for example? Am I going to load high inadvertently because maybe my map was put in wrong, maybe my hierarchy is shifted, and something that used to be a level 0 member is now a non-level 0 member or a parent? So for Baha Mar, we took this concept and we ported this and redeveloped it for cloud-based integrations. And we were able to use the Cloud Data Management REST API to support this. So I brought it up a bit earlier, FDMEE versus Cloud Data Management. It's not a versus, it's how can I use these things together? So with the REST API, we were able to go out and look at PBCS and FCCS and compare what came through FDMEE, how the maps got applied to it, and see, is that actually loading to a level 0 member that exists in the outline of PBCS or FCCS? And so that prevented us from getting errors on load. We're able to stop the process early and collect the information we need in order to either update the metadata, update the maps, or even go back to the source system and update the data there. Another benefit is that it prevents business rule execution failure. So if I'm trying to say, well, run a calculation, particularly a clear, on, let's call it the entities. If I try to run a clear on an entity that doesn't exist, well, then I'm going to get a failure on the execution of that business rule. For anybody that's done these types of integrations, you know that that is sometimes difficult to troubleshoot. So preventing that error from occurring early on in the process allowed somebody to take a more proactive approach. I'll talk through this a bit more in lessons learned, but we found that we learned a very painful lesson about a bug that existed in Cloud Data Management, has been partially fixed by Oracle, but it relates to what we call a connection leak. And as we get into lessons learned, I'll expand on this. Substitution variables. What good SSpace-based application, which obviously PBCS is, doesn't have substitution variables? Well, in this case, there's a plethora of substitution variables. When we look here, the items highlighted in green, those are the substitution variables that are updated daily. So you can see the ACT day, the very first one there. You can see in FY18 March, that's day 28. Well, as I said before, data is integrating every single day. So we had to go in and change these substitution variables dynamically every single day. Again, we're not going to ask somebody to log into the system and update. I haven't counted them, but there's 15 to 20 different subvars here. To go in and update those every day, I have to remember when the month rolls over to change each one of these that says month 1, month 2, month 3, so on and so forth. So we were able to build this into FDMEE scripting to go in and update these things. And so, again, set daily. And in this case, we utilized EPM Automate. EPM Automate, invoked from FDMEE, was able to use the set subvars command to update each one of those substitution variables dynamically. And there you can see a little bit of code, a little bit of fun for anybody that's interested in trying to do something similar, where we were literally looking at the system date in order to tell us what the subvar needed to be. This is just a small snippet of the code, but it gives you kind of an idea of how you can start to think about these things and bring those on. So, execution of business rules. Part of any data load cycle that includes FDMEE or Cloud Data Management is a bit different than what we might think of in pre-cloud days or pre-FDM days. With FDMEE, we actually tie together the idea of a clear and a post-load process, whether it's a calculation and or an aggregation. As I said a little bit earlier in the presentation, Cloud Data Management has this capability native to it. FDMEE doesn't. So we built in FDMEE to be able to do a clear of the data prior to the load the data, and then run an aggregation after the fact. And we made it so that it was intelligent and smart. It was driven based off of the point of view as opposed to substitution variables. So that as somebody maybe needed to go back and reload history, they didn't have to worry about the impact of substitution variables. They simply ran the point of view in FDMEE, and that was able to pass to the business rule, the POV, to be calculated. Again, for this, we utilized EPM Automate, run business rule, capability right there, worked out very nicely. Bit of learning, and we'll talk about this in lessons learned, but this will look at some point to transition to the REST API to support greater concurrency, and I'll expand on that in lessons learned. All right, so let's talk. We've talked so far about data integration. We talked about FDMEE and why it made sense for Baha Mar when they did, excuse me, when they did Oracle SAS for them to have an on-premises deployment for their data integration solution. So now we get into the master data side of things. Well, Oracle introduced, I think as everybody probably knows at this point, but if you don't, a new cloud service called Enterprise Data Management Cloud Service, EDMCS. People like to call this DRM in the cloud. That's not an accurate description. It services the same domain that DRM does, but it is not a port from DRM to EDMCS. It's a completely re-envisioned application that changes how you do things. As part of this, though, they did what Oracle calls an early adopter program. So this is a formal program by Oracle to beta test a new software/cloud services. And in order to qualify for this program, you had to meet the following criteria. You had to have an eminent project. Check. This was an eminent project. The project profile had to fit the anticipated use case. So basically, was EDMCS going to be a good fit for what the customer needed to do? They don't want a failure in the early stages. So FCCS, PBCS, relatively straightforward structures that are able to be mastered fairly easily with this product. That checks the box. Is the customer reasonable? So in this case, Baha Mar, incredible group of people, really great to work with. They understand the challenges that software can often bring. They're able to work through those. They understand as going into this program, even more so that it was a beta, and that problems would likely crop up, and that they wouldn't be unreasonable in their response to that. So they check the box there. And then lastly, are we a qualified consulting partner? So not only as a partner are we somebody that understands master data and how things should work and how to design and architect a solution, but is the person that's going to be working with the Oracle developers and the development team and product management, are they a reasonable and level-headed person? Do they have good experience that they can feed good information back to Oracle, provide them good ideas, and really partner together? Well, we checked that box as well. So as a result, Baha Mar was accepted into the early adopter program, just one of 3 worldwide that was accepted. And so the intent was to leverage EDMCS to manage multiple hierarchies across both PBCS and FCCS. And in particular, excuse me, the account and department dimensions, as they were to be mastered in EDMCS, would be exactly the same across PBCS and FCCS. So it was important to make sure that maintenance was minimized. If I'm adding an account once, I'm adding it once, and I want it to feed to both applications. So we'll go through why that's an important statement as we talk a bit more about EDMCS here. Lastly, and I have it struck out there a bit, is we utilized early on in the project cloud data management in concert with FDMEE to augment some of the features that weren't yet available in EDMCS. I'm going to expand on this, so stay tuned. Early on, the product came out in January of 2018. We're currently on patch set 1810, which means in October there were new features released in the system. Anybody that's been around EPM SaaS for a while understands that nomenclature now. But early on, we had a decision point. We had PBCS and ePBCS application adapters, and we had the custom application adapter. And so we had to look at the requirements and the pros and cons and come up with a recommendation to the customer. So with the adapter there, we've got that built-in connection to PBCS. It understands the target application, the built-in properties, and some of the validations that need to occur there. We wouldn't have to build custom properties. And future enhancements from Oracle, which are voluminous and constant with the Oracle Cloud, which is great, those would be natively applied. And ancillarily, we could use the ePBCS adapter to connect to FCCS and actually publish metadata there. It sounds counterintuitive, but you can actually do that. Within EDMCS, you can register an FCCS application and push the metadata directly to FCCS. And so with all of that, that would eliminate the need for ETL work within, after the fact. The con was, at the time, and this is still the case, you have to register each target application separately. Well, in the early versions of EDM, a separate application had no way of interacting with another application. So if I added an account to the PBCS hierarchy in EDM, I would then have to add that account to the FCCS hierarchy. Well, that kind of flies in the face of master data management in some ways, right? The idea that I've got to put in the one account 2 times, one might say, well, why wouldn't I just do that in PBCS and FCCS? So that was the big con. So then a way to address that is we looked at the custom application adapter. So from there, we could create a single application and have that published to 2 different targets. To do that, we needed to create custom properties. We couldn't have very many validations built in other than kind of the basic ones. Is this field, is that a value that's actually available to be entered into this field? But outside of that, it didn't really have a good understanding of PBCS and FCCS. And then a very big one here is future enhancements aren't available to that integration. So if there's an enrichment to the PBCS adapter, the custom adapter and what we did there wouldn't actually come into play. So as we went through that, originally we started with PBCS and FCCS being a single custom application registered adapter. And then we would use ETL on the back end to then send that metadata to either FCCS or PBCS. And we built a whole automated routine around there. That was prior to subscriptions in EDM. Subscriptions in EDM have completely changed things. So now when I add a member to a hierarchy in one application registration, if I have subscriptions established, I can flow that through to the other application. And so we've actually gone back and we've redone the EDM deployment to account for that and to take advantage of all those pros that you see in the upper left-hand quadrant there for the PBCS and ePBCS adapters. But the automated metadata loads, let's talk about before 1810, because 1810 introduced that subscription feature. What did we do? Well, we utilized, after we built in that custom application adapter, we utilized the EDMCS REST API to download metadata to a flat file. The metadata file is saved to the FDMEE inbox. We would upload that file to both PBCS and FCCS. And this is where we got creative. At that point, cloud data management, if you remember the grid that showed FDMEE capabilities versus cloud data management, the very last row in there shows that cloud data management can do flat file processing of metadata files. Well, we took advantage of that. And so we used cloud data management to actually perform the metadata loads into PBCS and FCCS. After that was done, we would refresh the outline using the REST APIs of each cloud service. And then we would send out an email, again, how did the process go? So from a customer perspective, when they were in, last point there, this was all done through FDMEE. So what this looked like was in FDMEE, they would finish their metadata updates in the custom application, put in their new accounts, their new departments. They would go into FDMEE and they would click essentially the go button. It said load metadata. And so that would go out and it would talk to EDMCS, and technically it would have to do these steps: get the dimension ID, export that, check to make sure the export completed, download that file from EDMCS, upload that to EDMCS, execute that cloud data management job, restructure the cube, and then email out the results. A lot of different things going on there, all in the background. So it was an automated process, very, very streamlined, but we wanted to see about, all right, now that we've got these subscriptions, can we take advantage of the functions and features that are now available in EDMCS and streamline that integration a bit? So there, now we're using the EDMCS REST API to export the metadata. We're executing a metadata import job directly in PBCS and FCCS using the REST API after that export. So EDMCS quite literally takes metadata from its repository, creates a file, and uploads that directly to PBCS and FCCS when you register those adapters. So that's done. That file is being put over there as part of that export process. The import then says, okay, on the PBCS side, take that file and actually import it in and update my metadata. Still doing the cube refresh. We're still emailing the results. And it's all still being done by FDMEE. What we've done here, though, is we've taken cloud data management out of the process. Previously, we used cloud data management to augment the capabilities that didn't exist in EDM. So in EDM, again, we were using a custom application adapter and custom properties to filter what hierarchy goes to which cloud service. Because in FCCS, you have pre-built hierarchies with specific names at parent levels that needed to be maintained. PBCS doesn't have that, so we used cloud data management previously to filter out and say, this is the PBCS related information, push that over there. This is the FCCS information, push that to FCCS, and so on. Now that we're exporting the metadata using the application adapters directly to the applications themselves and leveraging those subscriptions to make sure that the metadata flows through to both, we no longer needed to do that. So it certainly streamlined it. So let's take a look at that box again. So still from FDMEE, they click go to load metadata, goes out to EDMCS. It gets the connection information now and says, okay, I'm talking to PBCS for this dimension. I'm going to go ahead and export that. I'm going to make sure that that ran successfully. And then over on the cloud side, once that's exported successfully, I execute the import jobs. Again, I restructure the cube and I email my results. No big deal. So the key takeaway from all this is EDM's growing and it's changing and evolving. So where we started and where we are today are somewhat different. And I would argue that the customer is in a better place because Oracle introduced new functionality that mimicked a lot of that DRM type capability. And so we thought it behooved us to go back and actually revisit the integration to make it something that's more sustainable as the customer goes forward. With that, let's talk a little bit about project timeline. What did it take to do all of this? Well, we did requirements in October of 2017. Design, same month, again, run lean. They need a solution. They're currently feeling a lot of pain, so we condensed this together. Build was relatively quick for most of these things. So November through February/April, depending on whether we were in FCCS or PBCS. The early adopter, we actually started that in December of 17. It was released for GA in January of 18. Our project continued through February of 2018 for the core build, and then, as I said, we went back and updated to take advantage of the subscription features most recently. Testing for FCCS and PBCS March and May of this year, and then go live there April and June of 2018. So this is Baha Mar is live with both of these solutions, or with this whole solution suite, getting a lot of value out of the systems. Lessons learned, let's talk about this. So EPM Automate does not support concurrent executions. So if I'm trying to run an integration from FDMEE where I'm invoking a business rule, well, when I run EPM Automate, I have to log in, execute my function, and log out. So log in, run my business rule, log out. Well, if I've got multiple streams of data coming in independent of one another, if they're overlapping, that creates a problem because you're logging in under one system ID. When you go to do that second process, if you're midway through the first one, and you get to the end of the first execution and you're only midway through the second one, well, that logout command can impact the second execution that's occurring. So how do you adjust for that? You don't. You transition to the REST API. We discovered a connection leak. So in Cloud Data Management and in FDMEE, on the target application registration, there's a button that says refresh members. And what that does is it goes out and it reads the target application and it downloads that metadata information into the FDMEE or Cloud Data Management repository. Well, when that's invoked in Cloud Data Management, it doesn't actually close the connection. And so what that does is it eats up the connections at the database level. Getting a little bit technical on you here, I apologize for that. But what ends up happening is you essentially crash the pod. Not log in through EPM Automate and do reset service. It is a complete crash of the pod. You have to contact Oracle and have them reboot the machine. It is ugly. It was a very hard learning. It has been partially fixed, but use that refresh members with a little bit of caution, particularly if you're in a heavy load cycle. You might not want to be clicking that button too many times. This one is not applicable to Baha Mar anymore, but just general lesson learned when you're using Cloud Data Management. What I found as I was going through it was it's best to break up these metadata feeds for each plan type individually. So in PBCS, you have multiple cubes that can sit, cubes or plan types that sit below the application level. I think most people are familiar with that. Instead of trying to manage all of that together as one metadata load, having them as individual metadata load processes worked better. So it was definitely a lesson I learned and one that I'd like to share. Excuse me. As part of that, if I am loading metadata from a flat file through Cloud Data Management, I want to make sure that even though I'm doing each plan type individually, that the global metadata properties are included in each one of those. So for example, the account type, I want to make sure that that's on every single metadata integration. So next steps for these guys, they're currently in the process of implementing ARCS, so for their account reconciliation. And as part of that, we're going to continue to expand on EDMCS to support their ARCS profiles. Now, interestingly, ARCS isn't yet an application adapter that's available for EDMCS, so we're evaluating the roadmap, talking a bit with Oracle on when this may become available, and it may impact how we approach this. But again, it's fluid. EDMCS is rapidly evolving and growing, so the answer today may differ from the answer in 3 months from now. Also want to implement EDMCS for the Great Plains General Ledger, which is an interesting one. So stay tuned for maybe Kscope 19 next year. So to that, I'm going to jump to the questions in a moment, but I've already said it, Kscope 19. Kscope's a fantastic conference. A couple thousand people or plus come and attend this. You've got a wide range of technical experts and business users at the conference that really understand the value of EPM and how it can be used. There's also much outside of EPM, but obviously my focus is within the EPM space, so I'm going to stick there. It's in Seattle next year, so the conference moves each year, which is kind of cool. We get to experience some new places. Even though we were in Seattle a few years back, we're going back, and hopefully I will see some people there. So with that, I do have a couple of questions that I need to look at in the chat window here, so give me a second to just kind of read through these. So the first question is, does cloud data management have an open batch equivalent? So for those of you that are not aware of what this question actually means, open batch is the concept that I put a file in a specified naming convention into a directory, and I click execute within FDMEE, and a lights out process runs in the background. We call it batch execution in FDMEE. So that process will grab the file from that directory. It will look at the file name to determine what's the point of view through which I process this data, and it will run that workflow process. It'll import, validate, export, and check. So the answer to the question, now that I've given a little bit of background, is yes, that capability exists. FDMEE, or I'm sorry, Cloud Data Management has the open batch capability. The key thing to consider here is getting data to that directory. So that folder exists. There's an application folder structure. Within the inbox, there's a batch directory and then an open batch directory. You need to get the file to there. You can do that manually through the web interface of Cloud Data Management. I wouldn't recommend that. That wouldn't be a whole heck of a lot of fun. Or you could use EPM Automate. So that's one quick and easy way to take a file that will be sitting either on a network or on a server within your network. Maybe it's on your desktop. Probably not a great place to keep a file, but it may exist there. Maybe it's a file you downloaded from an email, and get that uploaded into the open batch folder for batch processing. Lastly, you could also use the REST API to transmit that file up there. EPM Automate works pretty well and services the majority of customer needs to get files uploaded into the cloud services for processing. So again, just playing it back, does Cloud Data Management have an open batch equivalent? Yes, it does. Excuse me. Next question. We're considering EPM Cloud with FDMEE on-prem as well. For on-prem infrastructure, do you have a foundation server plus FDMEE server? Any other servers needed? So this is what I would consider an infrastructure question. So I'm not an infrastructure expert. I definitely can speak to it to some degree. So I'm going to couch this with, you want to continue to have conversations around this with somebody whose expertise is specifically around infrastructure. What I can say is that just like every other good consultant, the answer is it depends. It will depend on the data volume that you intend to process. So for small to medium files, you can likely collapse all of that required infrastructure, so the shared services component as well as the FDME component, into a single server. And whether it's 4 processors with 16 or 32 gigs of RAM, that's sufficient for the overwhelming majority of integrations that will be handled by FDMEE on premises. That said, nothing's an absolute. If you have complex integration requirements, you've got large data sets, you've got a number of users that might be hitting it, you may need to scale that. You may need to have a multi-server environment to support that more readily. And so what I would recommend for as you're trying to go through this is to engage with either your partner or with a partner, if you don't currently have one, that has expertise in the infrastructure space that can speak to you more about what FDMEE, how that should be scoped. So hopefully that addresses that question. There's another one here that is the new OneCloud product a good alternative to using FDMEE/EPM Automate for EPM cloud integrations? So for those of you that aren't aware, OneCloud is an additional product that's offered outside of the Oracle product suite. So it's offered by a third-party vendor, and I believe that the goal of this is to streamline some of the challenges that have existed around integration. And this is somewhat of a loaded question, I'll be honest. And so I'm going to temper my answer a bit. What I would say is that it behooves people to understand the capabilities that are available in the marketplace. It's certainly fair to evaluate and see, is there other software that helps us address a challenge? That said, some things to consider. What is the partnership between the vendor, any vendor, not just OneCloud, any vendor? Are they tightly integrated with the vendor whose products, their product will be interacting? So is OneCloud connected with Oracle? Because that's important. As Oracle makes changes to the cloud, which they do on a monthly or bi-monthly basis, what's the ripple through impact? How is that going to impact what their product can do? Is it going to break? Are they going to be scrambling to respond to breaks? Or are they going to get information ahead of the fact that allows them to change their code line in anticipation of those changes coming through? Do we want to pay for another subscription? Do we want to be tied into another set of subscriptions? Those are two primary things to consider as you're going through this. The answer might be yes, there might be enough value there. I'm not saying that it's a good or bad thing. I'm literally not giving an opinion here in terms of whether or not you should evaluate it. I'm saying that it always makes sense to understand what's in the marketplace. So hopefully you find that a valuable answer. Okay, next question. All right. I don't fully understand this. I'm going to play it back, and I may choose to skip over this one. Don't want to talk about the pricing, but how many users, and was there an evaluation on comparing the on-premises implementation to cloud in terms of cost of implementation, maintenance, and ROI, or return on investment? So now that I actually spoke it out loud, I understand what the question is, and I know we're running close on time. I'm happy to stay and continue to have a conversation. So for those of you that are on the line that want to continue getting through the rest of the questions, please hang out. I'll continue to go through them. In terms of Baha Mar, Baha Mar had made the decision that they were going to do cloud. We were not part of the software selection criteria process. They had engaged with Oracle sales directly on that. I do not believe that on-premises was evaluated in any way. And I don't disagree with that decision, given what they are as a business. They're essentially, think of it almost as a startup. It's a new business that's opening a resort. Certainly they're part of CTF, which is large and has a lot of properties and does a lot of different things, but this very much operates as a standalone business unit. So for them, they need to be nimble, they need to be fast, and Oracle Cloud and the capabilities that Oracle continues to bring there makes a lot of sense for them. I've said it before, I'll say it again, there's always it depends. That answer isn't going to apply for every customer. Some customers might make sense to be on premises for certain components, or some customers it might make sense for a certain period of time to be all on premises, or some hybrid approach where certain components stay on premises and certain go to the cloud. Others, it might make sense to be fully cloud. In this case, it made sense to be fully cloud. With PBCS, so the next question is, with PBCS, what was the experience like with implementation? Were there any surprises or issues? So I did not do the implementation for the PBCS side, but I was obviously closely integrated with the team. We all worked very closely together to make sure that this all worked from an integration perspective and from a solution perspective. Like every project, if anybody ever tells you that a project went off without any issues, they're likely either misremembering or misrepresenting. So certainly there were issues. The biggest issue, like most projects, is availability. Availability of resources and availability of data. Getting data into the system, sure, we have availability to get those things out of the system and get that integrated and loaded. Is it challenging for some of those systems? Certainly. That's not the biggest challenge. The availability of data is the availability to reconcile data, to spend time getting your structures right, getting your calculations right, getting your mapping right. Those were the issues. And spread incredibly thin. It's not uncommon for these people to work 60, 70, or 80 hours or more in a week consistently for months and months and months on end. Trying to get somebody's time in an environment like that is very challenging. So were there issues? Certainly. Issues around technology? Not as much. It's kind of typical project issues. It's generally around resource availability and data, whether it's data availability or data reconciliation. Technology proved to actually be pretty solid. We demoed this solution from the PBCS daily operational reporting side at Collaborate, and people didn't believe the story that we told them as we went through the PowerPoint. And it was interesting when we actually showed the system in a live demo, not a pre-recorded one where everything goes perfectly, but a live demo. You could actually see the audience respond to, wow, I can't believe that actually works, and how that all flows through the system. I change my occupancy rate and it flows through and updates all these other things, and it gives me actionable information. We're really excited about it. Baha Mar is really excited about it. So I think that was the last question. So thank you everybody for attending, and I hope you have a great day.
Thank you so much, Tony. Thank you all for attending. And like Tony said, I hope you all have a great day.